Icebreaker, Maiorana. Good evening, fellow Toastmasters. So, it's Maiorana. I'm proudly Italian, but also South African, since I've been here since I was 6 years old. The story goes as follows. So, my dad and my mom, obviously from Italy, and my dad comes from a town in Calabria, which is south of Italy, my mom from Bari. But they both moved to Milan. At that time, it was just after the war, so everyone was looking for jobs and a better life. And so from that, my dad did many jobs. My dad was eventually in Milan, he was a fitter and turner, and my mom was a seamstress. They did that my dad was in his early 30s, and he thought, well, this is enough of this kind of job, and we're looking for better life. And we had 3 cousins that were in South Africa, 2 of which were panel beaters, and one had just started a restaurant. So in 1977, my dad decided to fly and to come and visit. He fell in love with South Africa immediately, and he soon came back saying, well, I think this is where we need to go. By 1979, he came back for the next visit to really see that this is what they want to do, and basically came back home and said, this is where we're going. My mom wasn't quite as enthusiastic as he was, but nevertheless, he soon actually got a call after his second trip where they said, why don't you come, there's an opening there's a restaurant at this airport, Vonenburg Airport, which is kind of run from a management company, and they were looking for they now wanted to leave soon, and so they went to my cousin who was the other restaurateur and said, well, are you interested? So he phoned my dad and said, don't you want to come? Or you can come. So, based on that, my dad being very proud and don't want to be seen as a failure, and success was one of the things that drove him. So he went back and thought, okay, how am I going to do this? I'm getting into food, I don't know nothing about food. So he had a local baker, and he asked the baker would it help him. So every morning at 3 o'clock, he'd go to the baker and learn to bake from 3 to 6. At 7 o'clock, he'd open his workshop and work until 5. And then at 7 o'clock, from 7 to 9, he went to a gastronomy class. And he did this for 6 months. Soon after that, it was getting time to get ready to immigrate. So he had to start, selling and getting things ready. And my mom really didn't want to come down. So what did they? And obviously now we're coming to Africa, you're going to land amongst the animals, there's no shops, blah, blah, blah. So he said, okay, I need to bribe my mom. So he said, okay, what do you want? And he bought her everything she wanted, furniture and this, and then anything for the house to just calm her down and give her what she wanted. And before we knew it, it was April of 1981, and we arrived in South Africa. We literally went straight into Vonenburg Airport, which is where we still are today, 43 years later. However, it was within 3 months. Now, remember, my dad doesn't speak English, let alone Afrikaans, being in the Noord, over the border was curtain, that's all that was. So, it was very hard and difficult. So, everything was against you. You grabbed in your bags, you don't know the language, you don't know the people, you don't know nothing. And 3 months later, he got a telegram that the ship had sunk. So everything we bought, everything they worked for, everything they lived for is gone. We literally arrived with bags in our hands, and that's it. And it wasn't even insured properly because the guy that was selling the insurance said, but there's no need to put a high value, there's no more piracy, there's no more ships don't sink, you just insure a little bit just when something breaks on the trip. So, nothing. So that kind of meant that so the success part and the philosophy of my dad, my mother was obviously devastated, and you can imagine for a woman, you've lost everything, your memories and everything. But my dad's opinion on this was, well, what if the ship arrived and the aeroplane didn't? And so that's why giving up isn't an option. Because you've got to take with what you've got and not with what you could have had. So you've got dull lemons and you need to make lemonade, and so he did. And so from that, the first 3 years of that I can remember, which is basically over 1,000 days, there was not one day. He literally worked 1,000 days in a row. Simply because there wasn't many staff. I mean, he literally had 2 or 3 people working for him. The restaurant had to open 7 days a week because we were on an airport, so you couldn't close. And it's kind of that just kind of instilled in us what it means to not give up, and what it means to go forward, and what it means to not, that giving up isn't an option, and that we've got to find other ways. So people ask me, well, how long have you been in the restaurant? Because I wanted to see my dad, and that was the only option to see, because he was never at home. I wanted to be with him, and B, I developed a passion for the restaurant. I was with him every single weekend. And that went on right until up until about 18, 19 years old. That's all I did. Going out on weekends wasn't my thing, because I preferred to be there. And people say, well, when did you start working? As a 6-year-old, I packed fridges. And as an 8-year-old, I started making orders for him. And as a 10-year-old, and then you start waiting, and then you start making food. So the restaurant was my life. So it's not that I learned it, you grew up in it, so it just becomes your second nature. And that's why 43 years later, we're still there. We have more than one restaurant. We employ over 150 people. And we owe it to him for giving us the principles and teaching us to work hard and never give up. Thank you.